Do something! Don't stand by and watch. Fight him! No!
You let her die.
I didn't let her do anything. She fell off the cliff. With the dude. She sacrificed herself for the greater good. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is an action-adventure game developed by Ninja Theory and published by Xbox Game Studios. This game marks the return of Senua, who struggles with psychosis after her village was destroyed and her love was killed in the first game. This causes Senua to hear multiple voices in her head. In this game, as the Steam page says, Senua returns in a journey of survival through the myth and torment of Viking Iceland. Senua sets off to try to save the people who have fallen victim and made to be slaves to a tyrannical leader. So Senua has to face the battles both outside and inside the darkness to help save as many people as she can, while also struggling with her own demons.
Senua will follow that sign. She let herself be taken, dragged in chains to their ships, so she can trace the poison to its source, find the heart, and cut it out. Stop the slavers. Keep her promise.
I thought the story of this game was very good and a good sequel to what was already a solid first installment. The game will take you about 5 to 7 hours to complete, and it is on Xbox Game Pass, or you could buy the game on both Xbox and PC for $49.99. This game is a very linear experience, as there are only certain paths you can go, and to be honest, I think that's for the better. I don't really think this series has to go open world or anything like that, because not every game has to be open world. Sometimes it's nice to have a game that focuses more on the story and the characters in the story, rather than side missions and collectible hunting for hours on end. Now, don't get me wrong, I love doing that also, but I just think this series is one that just doesn't really need it. And with it being a smaller dev team than a normal AAA team, I think linear is the right approach here. And with these linear areas, they were able to take this series to the next level. Graphically, this game was stunning. Every time you enter a new area, you will just be blown away by how good it looks. The whole game makes you feel like you are just in a movie because of just how cinematic it all is, including the widescreen picture, which threw me off at first. I wasn't really a huge fan of that, but I got used to it pretty quickly as the game went on, and it didn't really take away from the experience for me. The sound design, as always in these games, was incredible. The voices in your head are incredibly done, especially when wearing headphones, as the voices will move around your head, and it's just great. Some of the best audio I have ever heard in a game. It's almost like they are right next to you sometimes.
You should not have come here, child. Your hopes were always doomed to fail. All this way. Just to die among strangers.
While admittedly sometimes the two constant voices in your head can get annoying and get on your nerves at times, that is also on purpose, because of what Senua suffers from. The voices are always supposed to be annoying and eat away at her internally, and it will do that as the voices will call her a coward and worthless, and things like that, as they try to make Senua feel like lesser of a person and always second guess herself. The ensemble cast here are pretty interesting and help Senua along her journey, and will play an important role in the game as it goes along. Admittedly, I would have liked for some of the characters to be fleshed out more so we can get to know these characters even better. That wasn't really the focus of this game though, as it was more about Senua's journey than their journey. But maybe we can get more of that if they ever do a Hellblade 3. The combat here is just an improved version of how the combat was in the first game, but the way that it was done is just so cinematic and jaw-dropping at times that it was always a blast to play even with the simplistic controls. You will have a light attack, a heavy attack, and a dodge, and that is pretty much all you'll have throughout the game, other than your ability to slow down time that will help you take on enemies, and will really come in handy if you're in a pickle, as I was many times, because for some reason for the first half of the game I really struggled to time my dodges. Not really the game's fault, I guess I'm just terrible at the game. You will run into hordes of enemies multiple times throughout your playthrough that you will have to take on in a cinematic-like battle, which was always fun for me. Now, I do wish that they would have been able to add more variations into the combat as the game went along, like some simple upgrades and abilities, stuff like that to keep the combat from being repetitive through the playthrough, as sometimes there are hordes of 10 enemies you have to fight one by one, and you will be using the same maneuvers the entire time. More upgrades and abilities would allow for Senua to do different things to make every battle feel different and crafted to the player's liking. The game also has multiple puzzles throughout the game that you will do, including matching shapes in the environment to open up areas that are being blocked off, which was very similar to the puzzles in the first game, but this game also added some new puzzles, such as finding magical ball-shaped stones that you put on a pedestal, and using a torch to light a podium or put a fire out, depending on what the environment calls for. These puzzles were pretty easy and didn't necessarily push any boundaries at all. It was probably the weakest part of the game for me, as some of the puzzles would just drag on way too long in my opinion. This was a problem I had in the first game also, where I felt like some of the puzzles drug on a little too long. It didn't really ruin anything for me. The voices in your head and dialogue along the way while doing these puzzles are always pretty interesting, and also some of the areas are so beautiful that at least you get to look at them while doing the puzzles. The game also has some collectibles that you can find that includes pillars that you can use your focus on that will give you some background and lore on some of the characters you have either come in contact with or need to learn about. You can also find trees that when you focus on them will grow and then will give you some more lore for doing that. All of these are pretty interesting, and it's worth trying to find all of these to help paint a whole picture when it comes to the story of the game. In the end, Hellblade 2 is a work of art visually and technically, and does a great job of telling Senua's story and taking it to the next level. The combat, while simplistic and could have used some upgrades, was still pretty fun. The graphics were amazing, and the sound design was top notch. And while it wasn't a perfect game, it was held back by some of the puzzles being too basic and never really adding more variations into the combat like I said before. This one was still an experience that had me on the edge of my seat from beginning to end, and that is why I am giving Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, an 8 out of 10. This game was just great, and it's one of those games that just feels next-gen. I don't think we've had a ton of those this console generation, and this is one of those few that has felt that way, and hopefully this will start a string of releases that will start to feel more next-gen. In my opinion, this is a crowning achievement for Ninja Theory, and I can't wait to see what they put out next, as even with a small dev team, they really seem to know how to make an amazing game and an immersive world. But what did you guys think of the game? Did you like it more or less than I did? Let me know in the comment section below. But that is going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.